This isn't going to be a long video again, but I just wanted to say that it's 2 weeks today until I leave for home. And I can't believe it. And right now I'm just really spending time with some people that I've met here and just really absorbing the last few weeks that I will be in California, because then I'll be back home and it'll be just a complete change. So I'm sort of getting my mind mentally prepared for that change. And I had a conversation with someone the other day, and it was a long conversation. We were all over different topics, and then I started talking about how there are different worlds and multiple realities and blah blah blah. And then after that, it's almost like I hit the ceiling of perception and my consciousness sort of went back through fear. But it wasn't like fear, it was sort of fear talking in a way, but I didn't feel fearful. But I felt fearful of certain possibilities of going home, like ending my life or getting hospitalized again and drugged up, or all these sort of scary possibilities were arising in consciousness, and I was giving voice to them and able to sort of talk through them. And just really seeing that in one moment I can be talking about alternate realities and overlapping realities and blah blah blah, and then the next, like, really afraid of going home. And not afraid of going home, but just expressing the fearful possibilities. So going from like infinite possibilities and beyond the possibilities that I even think and see are possible, but have sort of had a sense of sometimes, to the other end of the spectrum, like scary possibilities. And that's sort of what so-called mania and psychosis is. But the difference here is it was like grounded in reality. I had somebody to just have a conversation with about the most infinite possibility that isn't even possible according to the current way reality operates, to like these sort of scary possibilities when I go back home. And it's showed me that I'm not this like consistent ego. I can speak from this place of really seeing a lot, but then when that seeing a lot gets opened up, I can see possibilities on the scary end of things too. And that's what happens in map consciousness. We go into this space where we're seeing a lot of beautiful possibilities, and then we see a lot of scary possibilities. So it really feels, just with everything I've been through here and with the micronutrients, that those elements are still given voice to, but it's more grounded in reality, so it doesn't cause this backlog of fear. Because if those things sort of arose in my mind and I had no one to sort of talk about it with, then I might actually feel really fearful. But I was just able to talk about it and not be judged, and just listen to, and sort of listen to when I was speaking 5 minutes before about infinite universes and overlapping possibilities and how there are multiple dimensions and different versions of ourselves in other worlds and blah blah blah, and the next moment just being like, oh my gosh, I'm afraid when I go home I might end my life. And that's kind of how map consciousness is, when one is there by oneself, just with one's own consciousness, and being like, look at the universe and how beautiful, and look at all these possibilities, and the next being like, oh my gosh, I'm going to kill myself, in so-called mania and so-called psychosis. So what I'm saying is, when there's like a witness there, when there's somebody that one has a relationship with, that a person that is experiencing this can share the highest perceptions of like, wow, this is possible, and maybe this and maybe that, and then the next moment being like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling not really afraid, but I'm having these fearful possible perceptions, and then just talking about it, and then it sort of ended, and then I was like, wow, look at that beautiful bird or something, and then I was like, oh, and it's over, and just sort of went on. Whereas if I don't have somebody to share that with and maybe just sharing it with myself is okay too, but I actually had someone to talk to at this time, then it doesn't get turned into just me and my psychological stuff by myself. It's giving voice to the psychological stuff as it's there, and it's sort of witnessed by another person, and it's not something that has to be gone through alone. Because it's that aloneness that makes it scary. And another part of it, though, is really that this person was able to hold space, not being like, oh, you just changed. Like, why are you all of a sudden afraid? Or why are you saying these scary things? You were just talking about this. There was nothing like that there. So it was really this ebb and flow. And it wasn't about, oh, this person was just like this and now they're like this and now they're like that. And that means something about them. It was just really flowing with it together. And I feel that's really important, because when that happens, then it doesn't cause the distress. That's part of the point of what I've learned lately, is that when my nervous system is strong and things channel through it, I'm able to express it, partly because I've talked to myself so much about this and I can understand it in different ways. And then being able to share that with someone is powerful too, and having a relationship that is open like that. And that could be anyone, it could be even a stranger that is able to do that. And so it just really felt like this ocean tide. And it's another thing for me to learn too, that I can be expressing one thing one moment and the next moment something else. And what I talked about before is that could be seen by others as a mood. Oh, you were in a good mood and now you're in a bad mood. But that's just a person judging another based on good and bad, and not really experiencing the richness of what might be communicated if there was an open line of communication. And really, I'm seeing that a lot of this making distinctions about who's well and who's not is a big communication problem. We who experience these ebbs and flows in consciousness aren't able to really communicate, and then if we ever are, it's received as this, something's wrong with this person because I knew them this way before and now they're that way. But the point of this map consciousness process is to make us more fluid in our expressions, not just, oh, like being able to talk fluidly or whatever, but we change from different states of consciousness, and when we do, we're going to express something different. And it's not really dependent on circumstances exactly or whatever. It's a lot more complex. And so yeah, I'm seeing what I'm saying, but I don't know if I'm really expressing it. I'm trying to express what I've learned lately, and I think I've shared it along the way about how it doesn't mean now that I'm off the meds and I'm on these micronutrients that everything is just perfect. But it seems like when there is some kind of challenge, it actually feels quite subtle. And then with that subtlety, it doesn't feel so distressing. I'm able to really take time to understand what's happening, understand myself for myself, maybe share that with other people, and they have time to understand. And because I'm able to communicate, they can hear what I'm saying and they can listen, because it's not like, oh, I wasn't able to communicate. It builds up. And then by the time I'm like, I have to communicate this, I'm like, help me. Like, I don't know what's going on, help. But this is like understanding each little step of the way, so it doesn't build up to a point where it's so distressful that all I can really say is, help me, I feel like I'm going to die or something. And I feel like if it can be communicated, so I've learned how to communicate with myself. I've learned how to communicate with these energies, or what these energies are communicating to me. And these energies aren't, this is my ego in reference to these energies. These energies change what expresses through me. And understanding that, I don't feel like, oh, just a few minutes ago I was feeling fine and I was talking about possibilities, and now I'm talking about being afraid of dying when I go home. I'm not like, oh, that's bad. It's just kind of interesting and something else to understand. And it's understanding this ebb and flow, which when we don't understand it, it feels like extreme states. But when we are able to express and communicate with ourselves or others, if possible, and have a strong nervous system, it's different. There's still the ebb and flow, but it's able to be communicated so the ebb and flow doesn't build up, and the lack of communication translates into this extreme state, which that energy transforms into sort of desperately trying to communicate something through behavior, or in so-called mania being like really generous, or not being able to keep track of time. That type of movement is a type of communication, and it's like this buildup of not being able to move in this subtle understanding and communication and communicate with others. So if I'm just in that space of map consciousness and I'm not able to really communicate with others, I'm just there by myself bouncing around, and eventually it's going to fizzle out. But if I'm in the space of understanding and seeing more, and I'm able to communicate with myself and others, that strengthens the nervous system. It's not going to really discharge all the energy. The energy has somewhere to go, and it wants to be made relational. And a lot of times we try to do that with our behaviors and our gestures in so-called mania. But it's just kind of discharging that entropy. There's this energy that comes through us, and it makes us move and behave and change in ways that we wouldn't really volitionally do. But there's a way to understand that over time and then be able to communicate that, and then the nervous system doesn't really get out of control or whatever. I don't know. Because with the ego consciousness, we feel like we have some sense of control, but we don't have any sense of really understanding what's happening. We just have all these memes of thoughts and programs telling us how things are working, but that's not really how things work. It actually blinds us from how moment to moment life really works. And in map consciousness, we get in contact with that, but we don't really understand it, so we're trying to understand it while doing it. And that's why I feel it's really important to just continue to build more and more understanding. So that's pretty much all the time I have today, actually. But yesterday, after understanding that, today I just felt fine. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I was thinking about these kind of scary thoughts, and I didn't feel afraid of going home at all. But I was just able to express that and express anything and not really be judged for it. So that was really great. So I feel like what I communicate with myself is sort of moving out to communicate with other people. So this self-dialogue and understanding I built with myself is making it so I'm better able to communicate with other people when they're around. And then I don't seem whatever. It's actually interesting. So it's really learning how to communicate this somehow and speak as different energies, and not just as this one so-called consistent ego, and be able to move with that and sort of understand it and surf that wave of consciousness instead of just moving about according to programs. And I feel like I'll have a lot more to talk about when I get home, and I'm not really going to get too much into things. Maybe I will one day out of the last 2 weeks, but I'm actually feeling like my brain is not seeing a new level of understanding, but starting to integrate the things I've understood for myself along the way, because they're actually really proving very valuable in daily life. So then the daily life movement of it actually builds this new understanding, seeing the understanding I've built in action in my daily life. So maybe I'll talk about that, but I have a lot to talk about in my notes, and then I'll just really get into it when I get home and get settled, and maybe not until after the weather changes, but I actually feel just not talking to myself as much right now is good. My brain feels like it's integrating something. So we'll see.